we've got Alec Scobert on today. He's going to talk about his days in the Army National Guard, everything from South Korea to Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq. He's got a kind of a cool story. Talked about Tiger King, just lots of stuff. I think it was good. Yeah, I was excited for you guys to get to hear it. Okay, so fair warning, there is no real promised direction that we're going this afternoon, whatever it is, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm with Alec. Alec, for you guys that don't know, this is the first day we've met in person. We've been kind of like connected through social media for, I don't know, how long?
I don't know. I started coming to Shiloh in 2017.
That makes me feel really good.
I'd want to say. And then, I mean, I travel a lot for work, so I kind of like float in and out. But yeah, I'd say probably like 2018, maybe.
So what you're saying is if somebody's been coming to this church for only a year, it's not out of the ordinary that we haven't got to like hang out or get to know each other. Well, like, this is 3 years.
Like 3 years. Yeah, like 3 years. Granted, I'm not like a big like scream when I come to church kind of guy where I'm like in the back, like, everybody, my name is Alec. Right. Like
announcing your presence. So we were just talking about, and I'm not even sure if this is appropriate. We may have to this may be the first church broadcast that has to put parental advisory. Like one of the things that I promised Alec is we do not care. You can talk about whatever you want. It's not a big deal. If we have to put parental advisory, so be it. I don't want people to be wondering what kind of impression they're making. We were just talking about Tiger King. That being said, that was 2.5 hours from my house. So that culture of people doesn't seem that odd. What's been awesome for me is people who now see it and they're like, I didn't know there were people in the world like that. I'm like, no, I knew that. I knew there were people like that in the world. I just didn't know they had enough money to buy tigers.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something. I mean, people are weird everywhere, though. Like, that's not...
You can find weird people everywhere.
Yeah, like, you can find weird people.
But the people that are that weird, they can also afford that many tigers is remarkable. I mean, that to me is the thing that stands out. Like, how do these people put together this amount of money to be able to start something like that? They said he had like almost 250 tigers.
There's like 227 tigers.
And they don't cost as much as I thought they would. Like, I thought you were looking like 30 or 40 grand if you wanted to own a tiger.
Like, also, like, think of the customer market. Okay. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like a high demand item. Like, people want horses, but like, I think rational Americans are like, yeah, having a tiger would be sick, but if it got out and got my kid, I might be a little bit pissed.
I'm on the fence right now because my kid always carries a gun. I think it would be fine, and it would be awesome to have a tiger.
I don't. Like, it's like a prime example, like, of like mountain lions. Like you spend some time out in like the Ochocos or like Hell's Canyon, and like you watch one of those animals move out there in the wild, and for sure, like, if it wants you, you're done. I'm
dead serious. One of the most terrifying things on the planet is a baby kitten, and here's why. Because like my daughter got a little kitten last summer, and like you play with it, and as a kitten, it's this big. What it can do to your hand at like 8 to 12 weeks old, it's this big. So if you take something this big exponentially, now it's like 100. Like the ones up here, 150 pounds? Is that probably about right? And then
big male.
Like a tiger is 1,000 pounds.
No, 400. I just watched Tiger King. We binge watched the whole thing.
How much do tigers weigh? Now I want to Google it.
I don't know.
I'm going to Google it. Hold on. Keep talking because I think they may not weigh 1,200 pounds.
Like 400 to 500 pounds tops.
What does a...
But it's straight muscle.
Oh, dude. If you're a cat, you're made out of muscle. Period. Okay, a male can weigh between 200 and 680 pounds. I feel like that's a wide swath. How can you not, like, between 200 and 680 pounds?
I don't know. Maybe like 680 is like a super obese tiger.
Maybe if you really grow it up, give it some growth hormones. But anyway, so my point, this has nothing to do with why we're talking. But yeah, that a kitten this big that weighs like 11 ounces can just shred your hands. To think of what a cat that weighs 500 pounds could do. And same thing, they're just, you never see them. You never see them coming. No. You hear them coming.
No. Like, you never see one, like, closer. I mean, you hear the stories of the guys that, like, shoot them from 5 feet or 10 feet away as they're, like, getting charged, which, I don't know. There's probably some validity to it, probably not. But at the same time, it's like, I've only seen them at distance. Mm-hmm. Or, like, I almost hit 2 this year driving into elk camp. They were, like, 10 feet from my truck door. And just watching it move that close, it was like, nope.
The first year we were up here rodeoing was 07 with Lacey, and we were driving through the canyon going from like John Day up to Pendleton, and we stopped at that little gas station out in the middle of nowhere, and somebody's talking about there's a bunch of cats. And I go, yeah, I hear that like you never ever see them. And he goes, oh, that's funny because we see him dead on the road all the time. That sounded like such a Texan. So,
but that is very much that area.
well, yeah, I mean, coming around a blind corner, they're just sitting there.
Yeah.
I don't think I've saw one since I've been here. I've been here for like 8 years now. I've only seen one. And no tigers. So
Yeah, no tigers.
So we're talking to Brooke the other day. We've been kind of like I said, in contact. Same like music, same genre of music and stuff like that. Seems like when we're going back and forth, it's either sarcasm or music.
Yeah, or hatred for pets inside public places. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, the dogs on the
dogs in
airplanes.
airports, like that's.
Yep.
Nope.
Yep. So Brooke was in here the other day, and she's like, "You need to have Alec." I'm like, "I don't really know that much. Honestly, I don't know that much about your story. We'll get to that obviously today, but." She was just saying, like, just trust me. He's got a cool story, cool background. I know that she was saying you've been a huge support to her. And so I was like, okay, well, we'll do it. So I'm starting pretty much blind. You were raised here in Central Oregon?
Wrong.
Okay. That's why we're doing this.
Okay, so born in Springfield, moved to Sandy when I was 4, grew up in Sandy, moved out here when I was 17.
How'd you come here?
I moved from my house in Sandy with my mom and my dad, and I moved out here with my aunt and my uncle because I was getting in trouble in school and I wasn't going to graduate.
Okay.
And so we decided as a family to remove me from that situation, move me out here to Central Oregon. I moved in with my aunt and uncle out in Redmond.
Real quick, you're how old now?
I am 28.
So this has been, 11 years, something like that?
Yeah, it's been a while.
So are you already close enough to it now to say that was the right decision?
It 100% was the right decision. I was, and it's not something that you're necessarily proud of, and it kind of sucks to have to talk about it, but like I was not a good person at that time in my life, right? And ultimately to make that decision, like as a family one, like I owe everything to my family because like without that decision, like who knows where,
right.
You don't graduate. It's, it's 2020 now.
Right.
Like I'd probably be in jail or
Huge disadvantage.
yeah. I wouldn't have the opportunities that I've had in life without having made that decision. So I'm glad I made that decision. And furthermore, I'm glad that I had a family that was there willing to support me during that.
Which is hard. I mean, as a parent, I can't imagine. I'm aware that there will come a day where I have to decide not what is easiest or what I want, but what's best for my kids. There will always be situations like that. That's the hardest part about being a parent is I would think those times where you're like, we really feel like this is the best, even if it's not what we would have opted for. So in a sense, I don't know your mom and dad obviously, but it's cool that they were willing to go, hey, because I know there are parents who are like, well, we can't risk him leaving the house. We can't risk him not being here. And so for them, that was kudos to them too.
And I'm sure it was, super hard on my mom, but it is what it is and it happened. And so I moved out here at 17, graduated from Redmond with the promise that I would go to college because at the time we had that program at Redmond where they paid for a free year at COCC. And so I did that. Well, I barely graduated. My uncle had to actually send an email to the school to give me an extra 2 weeks at the end of school so that we could stay up till 3 a.m. one night and write this paper
Dude, what kind of uncle is that? Think about that. That's pretty rare for an uncle to be that committed.
He's the greatest dude ever. He's the dean at COCC right now. That's kind of always, he's been in academia after he left the Army. He did 4 years in the Army and then got his PhD in forestry and then started working at COCC. And he's kind of just been there, and then doing all of his outdoor Central Oregon recreational stuff that we all love to do,
Right.
Phenomenal man.
So he just really dug his heels in as far as getting you graduated.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome.
I would not have graduated without his help.
Yeah.
I would have been doing summer school or trying to figure it out, but
graduated,
skin of my teeth.
What was it about school you didn't like? Was it because I struggled in school too? Mine, I feel like we might be similar in this, is that it was just the routine every single day. There was so much wasted time. I didn't understand, I felt like I was always asking the question, why is this important? Why is this important? Why is this important? I've asked that question my entire life about everything. And what I found was the answer was just because. So in my mind, it was almost like, well, this is a waste of my time and yours. Why are we doing this?
One, it was never interesting.
Yeah.
I had very, very few and far between classes where I was interested and engaged. Right. And so for me,
bored young man.
I'm bored. Yeah. I don't want to be here. And for a lot of it, I felt like it was almost like social conditioning is what our education system is more based on.
Have you ever heard Have you ever heard Johan Hari talk about the second curriculum? Do you know what this is?
Mm-mm.
The first curriculum is the material they're trying to teach you. That's the first curriculum. But the second curriculum is literally teaching children how to fit into the work space as they graduate and go on to the next phase of life. They're conditioning, exactly what you're saying. There is an unspoken conditioning that's taking place for how to get you to fit into kind of the mold of society.
Yeah,
like you get up at a certain time, you come home at a certain time. Like they're preparing you to be a part of the workforce.
Yeah, exactly. You know, you're going to each class. You got to be there on time. That's what, to me, education felt like was social conditioning. And for me, like I'm not like a big giant like go hang out with super crazy amounts of people kind of guy. Like I spend my time alone. So
I almost think, like, looking back on it, I almost wish somebody would have said, like, this is our second curriculum and this is how it works. And we're going to be honest. We want you to learn how to fit into a job. And so I feel like if somebody would have just been even that honest with me, even if I didn't like it, then I'm like, okay, I get it. I just felt like there's always this sort of like wizard behind the curtain that I wasn't getting or I didn't understand. And that was it. This is not designed for a specific purpose of teaching you. This is designed to sort of mold you and shape you. Like, then say that. That's fine. Like, whether I agree or disagree, but at least be honest.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. Just the boredom.
So I would say, one, I wasn't interested, and two, I didn't really like want to do the whole, you know, like I played sports, but I never went to prom. I didn't go to like homecoming.
Same.
I didn't go to like any of the dances. Like, you know, like I had like my 4 or 5 friends, and we hung out outside of school, and we didn't hang out at school. So like I was just, I mean, well, when I went to school, I should say.
And that's like, my son is 11 and I'm already he's homeschooled and I'm already, like, both of them are. And I'm having this moment, like, it's important, maybe not because you're ever going to divide fractions. Maybe you're never going to divide fractions again. But what I appreciate now that I didn't appreciate then, that I wish I could have understood then, was there's going to be elements to learning this that you apply to learning something else. It's not even what you're learning, it's learning how to learn. Mm-hmm. And if somebody would have said, I guarantee if somebody would have told you, like, hey, this isn't about what we're trying to teach you. This is about you learning how to learn so that later in life, you've got a system by which you can take in information.
Critical thinking.
Yeah. I think there was 1,000 ways that somebody could have explained it in a way that I would have understood. But instead, I just got, like, shut up or go to detention.
Well, I went to detention like every day. So
right. I got sent to
totally
got sent to the principal twice in the same class. Okay.
Like,
anyway,
totally
so
normal.
You graduated high school.
Skin of my teeth.
Okay.
Went to college. Dropped out.
Okay.
I went for culinary, and you know, it's kind of just like a filler. Like, well, I like working with my hands and I like food.
Okay.
Like, so I was like looking at all these different options they have, and it was just like high school, where it was like none of this stuff. Like,
do you get to eat
I'm not
in the culinary
yes,
class?
You do. So I was like, I'm never
So-
going to be a writer, but if I sign up for the culinary program, they're going to give me this knife roll. One, which is cool. I still have it, right? So like you have this like $500 knife roll, and you get to eat all day. So I was like, culinary school, sweet.
And dropped out.
Okay. 3rd term, dropped out. I failed all my classes and just stopped going.
Okay.
And
Was there a plan at that point?
yeah, I mean, I always knew that I was joining the military.
Okay.
Right. That was something like I went down and watched my older brother graduate from boot camp.
Okay.
Down in California, and like I was just, you know, knee high to a grasshopper at the time, and he taught me how to march. And like from that day, we're there, you know, marching, and I'm like looking
Just
up at my brother, and I'm like, this is it. Like, I'm joining the military.
Yeah.
And at the main time, you know, at that time he was in the Marine Corps, and then he's 10 years older than I am, so he eventually left the Marine Corps and then joined the National Guard and the Army National Guard and did that. Right. So by the time I dropped out of culinary school, I was like, well, I don't really have anything else going on.
How many other culinary school dropouts do you think were like military?
I mean,
You might be the only one.
yeah. I mean, because
What'd you do? Well, I just got here from culinary school.
I just dropped out of culinary school. They were like, what? No, saying I can bake. What's up?
Does anybody need a knife roll?
Who wants some knives? No, but yeah, I mean, the Army brings in all kinds of people, right? So you get everything. It's just a melting pot.
Was that your first time? Because I know, like, Central Oregon, I don't know as much about Sandy, but Central Oregon is pretty sort of, I'm not going to say closed off. I don't mean that. But, like, the culture is so established here that to see somebody from a completely different part of the world, a completely different upbringing, was that your first time of, like, spending actual time around people that were that much different than you?
We traveled a lot growing up. So we went to South Korea to visit my brother once. Greece, Italy, a little bit over Europe, and we did travel a lot in the United States as well, but like we never went past like Montana, right? So we are very like, there's that, we're trying not to like offend people, right? But like, let's just get down to it. Like it's not super diverse in Central Oregon.
No,
right?
it's
like
it's very white.
It's very white. Like
yep.
it just, what it is, right?
It
so
is.
that was my first experience, was like
Other nationalities.
like with the cultural melting pot of like just one being immersed with people that think differently than you,
right,
and that are raised in a completely different
right
like setting of you, right? And it's super interesting because like you learn things, because people learn how to learn differently in different environments, right? Like, and so I mean, I landed in South Carolina when I got to boot camp. It was August. It's the first time I've ever been in the South.
It's like 110.
Thought I was gonna die.
It's really muggy there.
Oh, it's so bad. It is so bad.
Did you get a choice on where you want to go?
No, you don't get to choose. No,
because nobody would choose South Carolina.
no. They're like South Carolina. So, yeah, and then like you're just crammed in with all these people you've never met before that are just culturally so different from you. But like,
did you instantly like it or dislike it?
Nobody instantly likes it.
Okay.
Like, I don't think that like, because it is just organized chaos.
Okay.
There's like that old quote from World War II where it's like, nobody knows how to beat the Americans because we don't even follow our own like our own doctrine. It's just organized chaos.
Okay.
Like, and that's like what it was. Like, I got off this bus in like, so I land in South Carolina, I get on this bus, and then the next thing you know, there's just like some dude's like just swole jack dude with a big hat on just in my face, and I'm getting thrown off the bus. And then
I mean, from right off,
like
right
it's
from
just
the
like, yeah, it's chaos. Nobody loves it. Nobody's there.
So
like,
everybody says, this is my theory. Everybody says, like, I'm not gonna have somebody yell in my face. But when you're in that situation, it seems like everybody just realizes like this is not the time to draw dignity lines of like, you can't talk to me like that.
Yeah.
Everybody somehow just seems to take it. Well, I mean, in your mind, coming out of a school situation that maybe hadn't been great, was there a little part of you that liked the discipline part of it?
I mean, the discipline part, yes, but like also they make it very clear. And not anymore, because I have people that are in those positions, because like as we progress through our careers, you know, you go through broadening assignments, and a couple of my buddies are in broadening assignments right now on the trail.
What's a broadening assignment mean?
So it's a non-specific job position that the Army needs. So we need drill sergeants to run basic training, right? But nobody wants to do that as a job. You're working 18 hours a day yelling at kids that don't really want to listen to you. So the Army does what's called Department of the Army Selection, right? Where they like pull names out of a hat. They're like, woo!
Congratulations.
DA select. Like, you're now a drill sergeant.
Okay. I believe that you believe whatever's true about people. We have this innate sense of picking up on whatever's true about people. Mm-hmm. So you'd have to think there are people who are not naturally very good at yelling at people. You'd assume it's just like, there's some people who are probably good at it. There's some people who probably like have to really work themselves up to yell at people, right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. But the Army is super good. And one of the greatest things that I have learned from being in that organization is like, whether I do or I don't anything in life, it's my fault, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing that I can't do. Like, and I firmly believe that. Like,
how old were you when you...
Oh, probably like 24 when I came to that realization, where it was like, whether I do or I don't, it's on me, first of all, right? Like, there's not like this innate thing where somebody's trying to hold back my progression. Like, and you could always be doing something more to get what you want or to do what you want to do, right? Yeah. So like the Army can teach, I mean, we teach anybody anything, right? Like, with enough time, I think that you can do it. Besides leadership, that's like the one little weird
Leadership thing. Is either born or not?
Born.
Really?
Fostered. I would say fostered. So you're not born with it, but you foster it in somebody as like at a young age, right? That's why like Boy Scouts of America is such a crucial thing for society. Like having that, because one, like it's
aren't they closing?
They're bankrupt, which is sad, because like I'm an Eagle Scout, and you know I wanted to like put my nephew in it, and eventually I'll have kids someday if I ever decide to settle down and stop being a gypsy.
Drive him out in the woods,
but
leave him with some tools.
No, but like, and the point is like, it's not your parents that are teaching you,
right?
You know, like you're fostering mentorship in that organization.
Yeah.
You have other adults that are being hard on you, that are, you know, they're holding you to a standard, right? Like there's, you know, check the block. It's very militant in a sense, or it was
structured.
I don't think it's around anymore.
Right.
But that's why that's important, because that fosters leadership, right? So, but yeah, back to people yelling at people.
I just wonder in my mind, because I feel like I read people fairly well. I mean, there are people that are better at it, but if somebody was having to like really work themselves up, I feel like I would pick up on it. I feel like it would be harder for me to like listen to someone yelling at me that I know doesn't want to also do it. I feel like I would just instantly have this like, even if you have enough rationale to be like, not now, this is not the time. Keep your head down. Just fit in. I mean, I'm not making my point. I think what I'm saying is like, it just seems like if you're picking names out of the hat, you're going to be left with some people that are just naturally not very good at that.
Oh yeah, of course.
And so what do you do with that?
You make them work for 2 years as a drill sergeant, and then you send them back to their normal job. Like,
who cares? Who cares if you're good at it or not? Just do it.
You're doing it. Like, it's, yeah.
All right. So you get to South Carolina. You're how old?
19.
And are you like jacked? You said nobody liked it at first, but in your mind, I mean, what did you have a plan for where you wanted life to go, or was this the plan?
Yeah. So the bright side about the Army is that you get to choose what you're going to do, right? So my brother left the Marine Corps. He joined the Army National Guard for the state of Nevada, and so very similar structure, just state funded instead of federal funded, like the active duty services.
And you are what?
I am right now Washington National Guard, but I've worked 6 years on the active duty component, and then I did a year with the Washington Guard, came to the Oregon National Guard. I went to Iraq and Syria, and then I got back from that in 18 and went back to the Washington Guard. So now
I want to get back to that in a minute, but for now, you're 19 years old.
Yeah.
You're over here. You kind of had this idea that you were headed somewhere. Well, I mean, what was your target?
Well, you know what you're going to do when you join the Army because you get to choose your job,
okay.
right? And it's the only branch that gets to do that. Plug the Army. Hey, join the Army.
Good job, Army.
Choose your job, right? I got buddies that are recruiting, so if you guys want to join, let me know. I got some business cards. And I knew my job, right? So I signed up as either a 15 Tango or a 15 uniform, which is either a UH-60 Blackhawk or a CH-47 helicopter mechanic, right? Those are the two job options my brother gave me.
Okay.
Because when I went in to talk to a recruiter, he was like, yeah, just go in, get the guy's number and give it to me. And I was like, okay, cool. And then my brother did everything over the phone with this dude. And then he called me back and was like, all right, you're going in and sign your paperwork. And I was like, sick, I'm joining the Army.
All right, here we go.
And I got 15 Tango out of the gate. So.
And you, like, always aviation. Like, you always had a desire to be a part of that part of it. Because
I don't think.
Like Brooke was saying, she just loves flying. There's just something, like, innate that she just is drawn to flying. Are you that way?
Everybody is. I don't think that there's.
I wouldn't say that I am.
Like, well, then you've had like poor pilots. Like,
but you're saying there's something about it that's appealing to everybody.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's like riding a horse. Like, it's like one of those intrinsic things that I think is ingrained in people, just because it's something we don't know, right? Like, granted, there's like math, and you can do all the math to figure out how to fly.
Yeah, but I mean, up until when did it start? I mean, it's only been around for what, 100 years? I mean, it hasn't.
Yeah,
how long have we been flying?
I don't know.
But I mean, in human history, the scope of human history, it is relatively new.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
So it almost feels like we're kind of breaking the rules by getting to fly.
Are we though?
Well, so I'm asking, like, if is that what's so interesting about it, is that you have this ability to do something that, I mean, you think how wars were fought 250 years ago. They didn't have that option.
Yeah, no, it was like very much so like stand in a line and let's shoot at each other. Which, first of all,
next line,
no, like no.
So you wanted to, okay, so 15 Tango, is that what you said?
Yeah. So Blackhawk mechanic, right?
Okay.
So I knew that I was going to South Carolina. I was going to go to boot camp, and then they were going to put me on a bus. They were going to send me to Fort Eustis, Virginia, and I was going to stay there for 5 months, train to be a helicopter mechanic. Cold. I was there in the wintertime, and then I broke my foot, so I had to stay for an extra 3 months.
How'd you break your foot?
Playing basketball like a dummy.
With Army people, though.
With Army people.
It's different.
Yeah, no, it's dumb. I should not have.
So you had to stay there for how long?
An extra 3 months.
Gotcha.
It was miserable.
Is it cold? Like, is it the humid cold there, right? Like
No, it was dry. It was very dry.
In Virginia?
Yeah. So wintertime on the East Coast, especially for that area, like Virginia Beach, we're like an hour away from Virginia Beach. And it was just really dry, really cold all the time. And then like you're trying to work on these helicopters, your hands are cold, right? And then there's not really anything. You're in AIT is what it's called, which is schooling. So you're very limited as to what you can and can't do.
When you went in, did you want to be in the middle of action, like seeing what we would in the military, I would assume is like, I want to call them bad guys, but like seeing people that were not on your team? Or was it just a career trajectory?
It was just something that I felt like I needed to do to like prove to myself, because like one, like even in high school growing up, like I would tell people like, this doesn't matter, I'm going to join the Army, right? And
it was kind of a dismissal of what you were doing right then, because you were like, almost like an appeal to authority. Like someday, then the real
Yeah, there was
opportunities you're going to open up.
one, an appeal to authority, and two, I did it because I'm like obstinate, and I had enough people tell me I couldn't.
Why would people tell you that you couldn't?
Because of who I was as a kid, like, you know,
They just didn't think you'd be able to fit
yeah,
in?
they were like, you'll never make it, you know, and that was just,
Do you think that was like some next level reverse psychology by people who loved you? Like,
absolutely
tell
not.
them you can't.
Because it was like a ton of people from high school that were like, you know, like, and a ton of people like that you'd brush shoulders with. They were like, one, you'll never do it, and two, if you do, you ain't gonna make it, right?
What does it look like to not even make it? Because in my mind, like, if you sign up, you're in. You can't just not make it, right? I mean, if you sign
you can.
what does it look like to not make it? Because
They kick you out.
You just suck so bad that they say you can't be here anymore.
Yep.
I've got to know more about this.
I mean,
How many people do you know that the Army, like, has to know? You just...
so there's like multiple ways to do it, right? One, going through basic training or AIT, they can decide and do enough paperwork on you negatively to be like, this person is not a good fit for our organization. We're going to cut him a stipend and we're going to get rid of him.
So that's not the same as like a dishonorable or anything like that.
No, it's just
literally like you just can't be in anymore.
It's a general. So it's general under honorable, I think. And,
I can't imagine what it'd be like to show up at your house and be like, you know how they say we want you? Not everybody.
Dude, I know people. Right? You know people.
What do you do?
You know people that this has happened to. I mean, it's not something that they
Doesn't
probably
come
tell
up,
people.
right?
You know what I mean? Like,
They were just so bad.
yeah, the Army was like,
There's
I'm
nothing.
done.
There's nothing we can do with
Because
you.
like normally they have to recycle the guy like 3 times. So like you'll be 4 weeks into boot camp and they'll be like, all right, you're a recycle man. So they send you to like this holding place. You sit there for a week or two. And then the next group of guys that shows up to start boot camp, they just like shove you in that group and you start over day 1. Boom, go. And then it makes it like 6 weeks, right? And they're like, then this is like a completely other separate section of drill sergeants now, right? Then
So hold on. What do
guys
you do? What do you do?
are
You
like,
show up and there's a guy that's already there and he's like, hey guys,
well, he's almost like
recycling.
well, yeah, that's what you called them. You're like, oh, you're a recycle, but you got the insider knowledge as to what's happening. So what's gonna happen?
So you're kind of almost like on accident, you make the worst guy in the platoon the leader.
100%.
The dummy is running everything.
Like when I went through, we didn't have phones. Like we didn't have the ability to communicate with family. Like all you had was like the guys that you're like sleeping in this bay, this 100-foot long bay with all these beds in it and lockers, right?
Like, we gotta
That's
find
all
a
you
recycle.
got.
We
So,
gotta
like,
find a recycle. Where are the snacks?
like that's all you got is each other, right? So you all show up and you start to figure out like the recycle doesn't want to tell people that he's a recycle, but eventually it comes out because you're living and showering and being in close proximity.
He
with this
slips
person.
up and just
He
knows
slips
where the
up,
stash of
you know,
supplies
he
are. Like,
slips up one time.
How'd you know where that was?
You know, he'll slip up one time and say something, and you're like, how do you know that? And he'll be like, I've already done this. But anyways, you do it enough times, eventually they're just like, all right, you're done.
So there was a potential then. So when somebody goes, you're not going to make it, that in their minds, that's what they thought you were headed towards.
I don't know.
You were just like determined it was going to work.
Yeah, I was just like, I felt like I was called to do it, and I felt like it was something I always wanted to do, so I did it.
So fast forward, Brooke said the other day, like, you're good at your job. You're really good at your job. So there's been a transition somewhere between I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it, and according to her, that standard is like you're above what she would have considered just a normal guy. Like you're actually good at what you do. So you made the transition. Like you proved it to yourself. When did you believe it? When did you go like, no, okay, I did it. I made it. This is actually where I want to be.
I don't think I have.
Still don't feel that way.
No, because that's not how the military is structured. The military is structured for like growth, right? Like everything we do is paper. Right? Everything I've ever done, I have a certificate or an award or, you know, like a school diploma from something that I've done, right? And everything is weighted. So your physical fitness, your college education, your military education, your residency courses, your awards, you know, like all that stuff is valued and point valued, right?
Okay.
And not only that, so then now it's all, you have a number associated with you at all times.
Okay.
And it's out of 800.
Okay.
And you know everybody in the Army, you know their numbers, right? And you know everybody in your unit's numbers.
So you're wearing basically your accomplishments externally.
So like if we were both 15 tangos, I could be at like 610 promotion points if I was competing. My next promotion is a state board selection. So, but to get to where I am now, my last promotion was point value, right? So like if I'm at 610 points and you're at 508 points, I'm getting promoted before you.
I got you.
Right? So I know.
Keeps it standardized.
Yeah, it's standardized.
I mean, we got that many people.
Right? So like
it easier.
For A-type personalities, it's a really, really good organization because like there's there's always 5 things that I am chasing.
Predictability on
Like
that.
always 5 things. And for every one of those 5 things, there's 2 contingencies off of each 5 thing or each thing, right? So it always gives you that ability for growth. You're moving forward, you're doing something else. It's not structured around making it because there's always something on the horizon.
There's no it, so to speak.
You know, like you're just doing.
So you're rocking along. You get through with all the kind of the basic startup stuff. You're in. You've been there now. I don't know how long. How long until you realized, wait a minute, I'm leaving the U.S. to go somewhere. Where was your first deployment?
Oh, so I didn't deploy out of the gate. I went straight from Virginia to South Korea. Culture shock.
Okay.
So I had the option. They kind of give you an option. They kind of don't, right?
Yeah.
And it's like South Korea is one of those things where it's a 1-year tour.
Okay.
You go for a year. When you get there, you can volunteer to stay for longer. But no, very, very rarely does somebody volunteer to stay. And
just because they want to go somewhere else, or because South Korea is
the war's going on, right? This is like 2011, 2010, right? Everybody wants to cut their teeth, and especially as like a young junior soldier at that point, it was like, that's what I want. Like, that's the experience. Like, that's where you learn how to do your job. Like, that's it.
There
right?
are actual consequences to you doing your job well.
Well, no, there is in aviation everywhere you go.
Okay.
So that's kind of one of those things where it was like I had options. I knew that I wanted to go to Fort Lewis because it was Washington and it was close to home, right? And I didn't want to like really live in Kentucky or Texas or in New York. So I was like, all right.
Did you just put Texas in with Kentucky and New York?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
we'll get back to that.
Like the bases are all the same.
I'm just kidding.
Obviously, it's not the same thing.
Anyway,
Like,
so you knew you wanted to come back to Washington.
yeah, I knew I wanted to go to Washington. We have what's called a branch manager, one of those MOS immaterial things where there's a guy that is in charge of every 15 Tango in the Army, and he chooses where we go.
Okay.
That's his job, right? So he cycles us because every 3 years you're moving somewhere new. Boom,
Okay.
you're going somewhere else. And I asked him, I was like, hey, how do I get to Lewis? And he was like, well, if you want Lewis, you got to give me a year in Korea. I was like,
Done.
I don't want to, but I will. And so I volunteered, and I got Korea. We landed in Seoul. Went to a base called Yongsan, which is still there. It's the one of our bigger footprint bases in South Korea, and that's in Seoul. Then we went to Camp Casey, way up north. Did a month of like resiliency in processing, so that we could be tough now that we're away from the United States, and learn how to like deal with our mental anxieties and whatnot. And then I got shipped down.
And you're real quick though. So you're now clear across the world. This is now no longer Sandy. It's not Redmond. You don't have your uncle there to sort of like patch things up. And like, how does that affect you? Like in your mind, are you just like super aware of your own ability to pass or fail at that point? Or did you feel like that you were kind of
like if you're going to be dumb, you got to be tough.
words to live by?
I had to learn how to be really tough.
Okay.
Right. So I definitely had a lot of good mentorship while I was there, and I had a lot of bad mentorship. And so it was just kind of one of those
during
things.
resiliency training, did you, because I've heard people say you got to embrace the suck. I've heard that a lot. I've heard that about in every field. Like,
yeah,
if you get to a place where you can really lean into the worst parts of it, then you're going to make it. If you're trying to always avoid the worst parts of it, you're going to just fail miserably at almost anything you do in life.
100%.
So when you get over there and it actually starts to get rough, like in your mind, does that elevate you? You feel better about it? Or is it like, what have I done?
I mean, a little bit of both, like nobody's like, I definitely wasn't like sitting there going like, yeah, this was the right decision,
Right.
Because I'm like, what is going on? Like you're in Seoul, there's 18 million people in this city. Like we would come out of our airfield and go for a flight, and I would get claustrophobic off the fact that when we got to 2,000 feet, all I could see was buildings, not a tree in sight, everywhere, 360 buildings. And you're just like, like you're just stuck in this concrete jungle.
Right.
Like, and it's just insanity.
And so what was let me ask it this way. Is there always a pretty clear idea of why you're doing what you're doing, or the opposite of that?
100%. Like aviation is one of those jobs where it's not like, how do I explain it without getting in trouble? Like we're always doing our job.
Risk it.
We're always doing our job.
Yeah.
Right. Like there are jobs in the military where you just don't do your job. Like you do MOS and material things like paperwork or admin or something that's, any Joe Blow that doesn't have a certification can do. Because like in the civilian sector, you have to go to like a Part 143 CFR school for 2 years in order to go to the tests to get your airframe, your power plant, or your general, or a combined 3 to work on aircraft in the United States, right? You have to go to school for 2 years. But the military, bypasses that off of what I have researched. Don't quote me if there's any aviation buffs out there, but it's called the discretionary law, I think.
Gotcha.
I think.
It's not the same. It's not the same. If it's if you assume, then you're safe.
Yeah.
You know, I assume.
But we mentor mechanics instead, right? So like we have like a mentorship program where like there's always supervision. Nobody's ever working on an aircraft by themselves. There's always a technical inspector that comes in behind them and inspects what they're doing. And so, does that answer the question?
Yes. So you're there. You know what you're doing there.
Yeah.
And is there any threat of like there being a fight? Because anytime somebody hears military, instantly what they think of is war. Instantly. It's always the words like from a civilian standpoint. Anytime you hear military, instantly combat is like the first thing that comes to mind.
You're not really worried about combat, but like in South Korea, you are worried about North Korea. And that was one of the things that there's all sorts of missions that we do, right? So like I was in an air assault battalion, which means that like we primarily focus on taking infantrymen, dropping them somewhere that they need to go. They assault an objective. We either leave them there and come back to pick them up, or we like circle and then they hop back in the helicopter and we take them home, right? Like aviation is one of those assets where you can do that. And so if we're not training air assaults, which is something that we did often, you know, you're doing regular routine flights to make sure that everybody's making their hour minimums to maintain currency on their airframe. And then additionally, you're doing like general support aviation stuff. So like when I was in Korea, I had 6 months in the air assault where it was like guns and dropping infantry dudes off at random places, and then we would also fly around for proficiency, and then we patrolled the DMZ as well in these like big green army helicopters with yellow stripes on them. So they look like bumblebees. And you'd sit in the bumblebee and you'd go fly the border of North Korea.
So you've seen North Korea with your own eyes?
Yes.
Is there any insight that you could see from the border, or is everything that's mysterious about North Korea sort of hidden back?
It's like way hidden back. So like they have mock cities they've built along their border. So you have like that 5 mile section. You actually have like the DMZ, right? And then it's like a 5 mile buffer zone where like people are stuck in there. And then you have South Korea and North Korea.
Okay.
So we'd fly the DMZ, and everything on the North Korea side is fake. It's all like mock cities. They've built like mock buildings and then like put lights and stuff in them, and they turn the lights on at night to make it look like North Korea is a great place.
Wow.
And there's nothing in it. Nobody ever runs. Like nobody's like in South Korea like, hey, you know what would be really cool?
Man, we got to get out of here.
Let's
head
go
north.
to Pyeongtaek. I hear they got some great nightclubs.
What? So you're there for a year.
Yeah.
And the whole time you're there, I mean, you get done at the year, like you look back over the year there, as far as like your trajectory from where that went forward, are you glad for having said yes to that looking back, or is that something you would have done different?
100%. I mean, like I said, like I'm an A-type kind of guy, right? Like I'm always looking for the next objective. I don't say no to things in the military, which a lot of people do. They're like, hey, do you want to do this? No.
Right.
You know, like it's like,
yes.
Yeah. Like, let's go.
Right.
So like the opportunities that I got to cut my teeth in the air assault battalion. And then, you know, I had some stuff happen there with one of my bosses and I got fired. And then when his boss came back, I got promoted. Right.
Okay.
So it was like one of those things where like
That's
sucked.
validating.
Like it sucked, but then like somebody came back and validated me and was like, well, now we're going to promote you to a different position.
That never happens. That is so rare that like the exact same place you get burned is the same place that validates you. Usually those are the things you kind of have to just like write off and be like, I don't know, I got something.
Yeah. Like it is what it is and you move on. Right. So I went from the air assault to a VIP battalion, and I worked for like the 4-star general that was in charge of the country of South
Worked directly
Korea
for him
as his crew chief.
No
right.
way.
So because he flies everywhere, he had his own helicopters that like were prima donna helicopters, and they had lazy boy seats in them, and it was called Comhawk was the detachment, and so I crewed the 4-stars helicopter for like 4 months till he fired me. His name was General Thurman, and there's like a saying. It was
Is there
like
anything we're talking about right now that we're not supposed to be discussing?
no.
General Thurman.
Yeah, General
Okay.
Thurman. And like he would run through crew chiefs. Like it was just kind of one of those things. So like you would work for him and then he would Thurmanate you. You'd get fired. And you would work for the 3-star for a little bit, which was Johnson at the time. And you would fly and crew his helicopter sitting in the back of it and maintain it. So
a guy like that, like a 4-star general, do those people just think differently, or is it just someone who's outlasted everybody else who quit? I mean, don't know what it takes to get to that level.
I am not in a position to make a comment on that.
Yeah.
Because I don't know.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you don't know what you don't know.
Well, they're rare, right? Like a 4-star general
Very
is
rare.
super rare, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, so you come back from there.
Went to Lewis.
Are they pretty good about, like, if you give me a year, we'll do that? Like, did you ever come back from a year in South Korea and they're like, oh, everything changed, sorry?
I mean, people get burned. You know what I mean? Like, definitely does. But, like, I've been very blessed, I would say, that it's never happened to me.
Yeah.
But then again, I've definitely done the work.
Right.
You know what I mean? Where like, and sometimes you have to do that. And in an organization as big as the Army, where like we do like annual evaluations, they're called NCOERs, right? And I've had bosses that weren't necessarily fond of me, and like I wasn't necessarily fond of them. We didn't work well together, you know? So like that yearly evaluation comes up and they're like, hey, you're bottom of the barrel, you know? And it's like, yeah, but like prove it.
Right.
So like we have the ability to stand up for ourselves and lobby for ourselves. So because I've always gone that extra step in my career and everything I've done, I've always, for the most part, had the ability to get what I want. Like obviously if you're not doing anything beneficial for the organization and you just exist as a 15 Tango, like nobody cares. Man. Right. Like
you fly under the radar and just sort of disappear.
Like there are, for every one person that you are like, that's the guy, there's 7 of them behind him.
Just innocuous.
Just exist.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like the dude with the swing line stapler from
like
Office Space.
You always need somebody to like stock the tool room.
Yeah.
Like you always need somebody to like, you know, organize parts. Like.
Yeah, so. And that makes sense. I mean, I think that's true of anything in the world. Anywhere you go, there's going to be like the people who have a tremendous amount of ambition and other people who are like, I don't know. Like I'm just kind of doing.
Yeah, I'm just here to get paid.
Right.
Yeah.
I would ask Lacey, it feels like we're really blessed like here at the church. It doesn't feel like that personality type because we're real macro managerial. Everybody, I can't think of anybody that's not pretty much a self-starter here. I don't know, I'm glad you brought that up because I'm like, yeah, this might be the first place I've ever worked where there's not sort of those like hidden personalities that are just sort of.
Like Sandra at the front desk that just has been there for 17 years.
Yeah, what does she do? Okay, so you come back from South Korea, you go to Lewis, then what?
Because
you ended up here. Okay, so you eventually found us from Afghanistan. Am I making that up?
No, I found you when I came back from. So when I got off active duty, I was going to move back to Oregon, and I couldn't.
Why?
Different story. Don't buy the crotch rocket. Okay. Don't buy the motorcycle.
So you bought a motorcycle.
Yeah.
And could not come back to the state of Oregon.
Yeah. Well, I got popped in Culver, violation of the basic rule.
Okay.
A lot of trouble, exceeding 100.
Okay.
Lost my license.
Okay.
Really big fine. Couldn't move back home to Oregon, so I stayed in Washington.
Okay.
Right? So, and
in fairness, I don't know how you could have a motorcycle that goes that fast and not want to.
That is what I'm telling.
I'm not saying to do it.
That's
I'm
what
saying
I'm
how could you not
right
at least be tempted to want to
buy the motorcycle.
So you can't come back to Oregon. You're in.
I can't drive in Oregon.
Okay.
So it's like, how do I move my?
But you can drive somewhere else.
Yeah, in Washington.
What?
Yeah, I don't know. I did. So neither here nor there.
I'm not sure that's how those rules work. Anyway, so you can drive in Washington.
Yes.
So you go there, and then what?
I stayed in Washington for a year. Then I came down to Oregon for the Oregon National Guard. And my family at the time was transitioning from Highland, which is where we'd always gone to church. And they were transitioning. They kind of found this church through the Netherese.
Okay.
And we kind of just landed here. And then you guys started online content. And I was like, well, this works perfect for me because I travel so much. I'm always gone. Like, I can watch this online. So in person first for like probably the first 2 months.
Church background? I mean, were you raised in church or around it?
Definitely was in church, raised in it. At like 15, my mom stopped making us go.
Okay.
She was like, you don't have to go anymore if you don't want to. So, and what kind of 15-year-old kid's like, I want to go to church, you know? So I just stopped going.
They said they lost your mic for a second. We got it back.
Can you hear me?
I think 15 is about that age where it's not even church. It's like you start asking questions about everything.
Yeah.
You start asking questions about like, okay, this is how my dad does it, but is that the right way? This is how my mom's always done it, but is that the right way? Like, I think 15 is sort of that transitional age. Having been a youth pastor, like, they start to see that like, wait a minute, I'm going to have some sort of say in my decisions. The minute you can drive, you're expected to be able to make your own decisions to some varying degree because you're going to be alone. There will be periods of your day where it's up to you to make the right decision.
Operating an automobile.
So to walk away from it, was it based on a theology or just based on not fitting the structure of a church?
I just didn't want to wake up on Sundays. Plus, I wasn't that very good of a kid.
Right.
So, you know, like it's kind of one of those things where it's like, I don't want to go to church and I don't want to go to school.
Right.
I just want to be. I almost swore. Almost swore. That was close.
Have you seen the video of the little kid? Like, he stole a car. Like, what are you doing? He's like, I just want to do hood rat stuff with my friends.
I just want to do hood rat stuff with my friends.
So coming back then from how long would you say you were gone? Like outside of the church altogether?
I I don't know, I mean, maybe a year and a half, because I started going back to church when I came out here to Central Oregon, and then I went to church through like boot camp because you get to take a nap, right? Like it's a secret. There you go. One of the recycles actually told us that. He was like, "Hey, look, so like, no,
you guys all go to chapel. You can nap for an hour."
This is no joke, right? This is no joke. He tells us, he's like, "Look, if you go to church, you can nap, but you can only nap at the gospel service." And I was like, everyone's like, "What are you talking about, man?" And he's like, "No, check it. Like if you go to the Christian service, the chairs are super hard. You can't sleep there. But the gospel service is at the movie theater. So you get to go in there, they turn the lights off, you can take a nap." And like, we're so sleep deprived, everybody's like,
this is the biggest church on the entire planet.
So we would get bused all the way to
recycles.
the gospel service, and then we would take a nap.
So at what point in your life would you say, and I make assumptions, I mean, I assume I kind of have an idea of where you're at in your walk with God, but just from knowing what little I know of you, at what point did it go from like a place that you went to something that was more personal? Is that a good way to say it? Like something that was like more of your decision rather than just a place, or like, because what I see a lot of is this. There's two types of people that find their way here. People that they're kind of following the group. There are those that like, there's a lot of people here, so they feel like, well, all these people couldn't be wrong. There is some of that. But the other part of that is people who are like, I don't want to be shoved in with everybody else. They're like, just let me figure it out. And they're here because they're like, I don't know everything, but I at least want to be in a place where I can ask questions. Right? I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so it doesn't seem like you would be the type that would go because everybody else is going. It seems like the opposite of that. So if you're here, there's something specifically in your mind that keeps you coming back or keeps you tuning in online.
With the church, or
no, your walk with God.
My walk with God, like when did that become serious?
When did it go from, because as a kid I went to church, but
like 2015 probably, because I was coming off active duty, really scary time. Everybody in my friend group that was still on active duty with me had already all caved and re-enlisted, because like the prospect of like, you've done this for 6 years, like this is all you've done, like how are you going to make it on the outside as a civilian? Then they lie to you and you go through this progress Army career assistance program where they try to get you out, and they're like running the numbers with you, like if you don't make $75 an hour, you're gonna be homeless.
Right.
And you're like, well,
I guess I'll stay.
I'll stay. So you re-enlist, and so like I'm getting out of the
Are
Army.
you guys keeping the gospel service? Okay, I'm staying.
I'm the only one in my friend group that's actually getting out. Everybody else is staying in. They've already all re-enlisted, and like I'm holding strong. And the Army offered me a promotion, and I turned it down. And they were like, all right, now we'll offer you like a promotion in Honduras for a year. And I was like, no, I don't want to go to Honduras. I just want to get out. And they're like, well, Alaska. And I'm like, no, I just want done. Like I don't want to be a part of this organization anymore. I don't feel like this is where I need to be, right? Like I felt called to go do something else.
Did you know what that would have been, or you just wanted to go explore other options?
I didn't know what it was. I had no clue. You know what I mean? I don't think anybody leaving the Army actually knows, because like that is such, I mean, that was like one of the craziest things in my life, because the Army is so good. It's like about keeping you feeling validated and feeling well. And like, there's such a community involved with that.
Right.
That like the day that I got that paperwork, that was like, it's called a DB-214. The day that I got that paperwork and I was separated from the military, it was almost like the silence was deafening.
Identity crisis. Yeah.
Like it was like the silence. Like I didn't know how to deal with it. Like no clue. And so, you lean into God and you kind of try to figure that out as you're trying to like deal with that like muddled progression of like becoming a civilian, which is totally foreign as well, because like it's just, they're two separate societies. Like
the same is true, actually, weirdly enough. The same is true with like someone who's rodeoed as a career, because then when that changes, you're not leaving home. You're not going and pursuing and chasing, and like the friend group is never in one place. You can't move to where everybody lives because nobody's home. So they follow like where the rodeos go to stay in connection with a community. And you can see it in the older guys who like, they can see that like this is probably time to start transitioning, but to what? Because when they step away from that, there's so much of their identity that's wrapped up in where they're going to be certain times of the year. And like, it is astonishing how many people that are successful end up leaving it all and all on the table and like having honestly really nothing when they're done, because exactly what you're saying of like, to make that sort of a life change is, man, it's hard. It's hugely difficult, especially if it kind of props you up. Like at a time where if somebody's having like a certain amount of success in their career, how do you walk away from that?
Well, and then you also have like the purpose aspect of it as well. Like a lot of my identity was tied up in who I was in the military, right?
Yeah.
So like when I left it, it was like, now I'm having to introduce myself as like Alec. And I didn't really know who he was.
Right.
You know, like I knew who
Yeah.
Sergeant Scobert was, 100%.
Right.
Like I knew who that guy was. Yeah. You know, he
Well,
was in
because
the
his
front, like,
job
that's
is
what his
this,
job.
and he does this, and these are his points, and
Yeah.
these are accomplishments, and
And
then
I
you get
answered
to
questions, and then,
yeah.
you know, it was just like all of a sudden when I got that paperwork, it was like, hey, my name's Alec, and I don't know what I'm doing.
I have no clue what that means.
And now I'm 28, and I still don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
So what's up?
Right. So, 2015, what changed in your walk with God? Like, because Lacey was talking about it before we came on live. Like, you sit here when you're here and you take notes to keep your mind engaged, like to keep concentration. But what is God doing in your life right now compared to the little guy that used to go to church because his mom and dad said he had to?
Oof. That's a hard one. Rephrase the question.
Okay. When you were a kid, you went to church.
Yes.
Because that's what the group did.
Mm-hmm.
You're 28 years old. That's not enough reason to keep you engaged anymore. Something has become more personal. Otherwise, in my opinion, you wouldn't be here. Like a 28-year-old adult male is not gonna, very often, they're not gonna come under compulsion, meaning because it's expected. There's a lot of husbands that won't come even though their wives are mad at them and want them to. Like, it's rare to find someone who will come to church under compulsion. If they're here, especially here, because it is so like asking questions. One of the things we say here is that it's a place you can belong before you believe, meaning it's a safe place to kind of like figure out what you believe. But if you're still engaged and still like online staying attached, what is driving that?
I think it's just I find purpose in God.
Okay.
Now, if that makes sense, it's almost like my identity's not tied up. Like it's not tied into it. How do I explain it? Like I enjoy my walk with God, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Right. And I think for a lot of it, I'm coming out of that like young 20-year-old kid,
Right.
and coming into like, you know, being a man at 28, which is frightening because I don't enjoy it. But doing that,
Yeah,
like,
I will say this though, and you're only behind me by 10 years, so that's not much. But the most miserable people in the world are the people who don't want to be an adult and they avoid it so much that everybody passes them by, and then like they're moving on and they've got jobs. Maybe they got like they're building a house now, or now they've got kids and a wife, and like the guy that holds on too long, all of a sudden looks up one day and is like, this is so much worse than being an adult would have been.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
100%. And so, I mean, I think that I'm just trying to foster that relationship with God and figure out what he expects from me.
Yeah.
Because I mean, for the last 10 years, and you know, I'm still in the Washington Army National Guard. We leave in like 3 weeks for an Afghanistan deployment. And
you've been to Afghanistan before?
yeah. So like I'm going back on a different airframe, but like
Where all have you
still
been?
going back.
You went to North Korea.
I haven't been to North Korea. Nobody's been there.
Sorry, South Korea.
You don't come back from North Korea.
You don't come.
Have
South
you not
Korea.
watched the interview?
No, no.
Okay.
Of course not. But okay, South Korea, Afghanistan. Where else have you been?
Iraq.
You're in Iraq.
Syria. A weekend in Spain, thanks to the Air Force. Yeah, when we left Afghanistan, the first time I went, we landed in Rota, Spain, and
Okay.
we had 3 helicopters that we were escorting in the back of a giant plane, right?
Okay.
And the flight crew like lands in Spain, and they're like, "Yo, plane's broke," because it was supposed to be like a gas stop, right? It's supposed to be
Okay.
like, "Hey, we're gonna grab some gas, and then we're gonna
Just
head
land
home."
and take off, right?
And like we land in Spain, and they're like, "Yo, plane broke. 72 hours. See you later." And they're like rolling golf carts, like they're like golf bags, like out of the back of the
What?
plane. And so we got a weekend in Spain.
Awesome.
Spain.
But with no requirements, just
Yeah,
be
we just
here when
hung
we
out,
leave.
hung out in Rota, and then like all over the United States, because aviation is just constantly like I've been everywhere, man. Like I just got back from a trip that I left for at the end of January, and I was in Pennsylvania, but like during that I went to like Kentucky, West Virginia. I went to Nashville, Vermont, Manhattan, like everywhere we go. Like, because when we travel, like you're already there, you don't know when you're going to come back. You might as well like go see all the sites and whatnot. So
Afghanistan to me is like, it's one of the most interesting places in the whole world. Like when you look at how they were able to be so behind the times as far as, you know, modernality is concerned, and still defend themselves against the Soviets, do a pretty seemingly decent job of defending themselves against the U.S. and Russia. And like, they're just this weird country to me that it seems so, like the deck is so stacked against them, and somehow they seem to just, I don't want to say thrive, but like they they're just tough. In your experience, obviously being in the military, it's not nearly that romantic, obviously. But I mean, how did reality change from the expectation? You go over there with a certain expectation of what it's going to be like. How did it change once you got there?
So I got to be careful in this regard because I am still very much in, right? But
okay. I'm going to depend on you to know where the boundaries are. I have no clue. I'll talk about it whatever.
I got it.
What do you know that's
this
secret?
Tell us some stuff.
Yeah, give us the stuff that'll send you to jail.
Stuff.
Come on.
Great. It's like everybody romanticizes it almost, right? And like, I'm not a gunslinger. Like, that's not my job. Like, I take apart helicopters, I put them back together, and I sit in them while the pilots fly, right? And if the pilots try to get a little crazy up there, you tell them, hey, why don't you take about 10% off the top there, and then you keep doing your jobs. Like, you're just dropping people off. I mean, a helicopter's like, $30 million, let's say, roundabout. I couldn't tell you because I haven't looked at a purchase sheet.
Right.
4 to 5 years. But
give or take.
$30 million. The United States government is invested into that. Like, we're obviously not putting it in risk. Like, that's not one of those things.
They would purposely try to take care of it even from an investment standpoint.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So, like, one, I'm not a gunslinger. You kind of have this romanticized opinion of, like, what it's going to be, and it's just not. Like, it's just like a normal 9-to-5 job.
Nuts and bolts.
It's just like a normal 9-to-5 job. Like, you show up, take the helicopter apart.
Did you ever leave? Did you leave base while you were in Afghanistan at all?
Not on the ground, but yeah, we fly.
But I mean, like on the ground, you were never like out.
No, we never convoy. Not from my standpoint, not in aviation.
Right.
At least in my experience, I've never had to convoy. Like 2001, 2005, that period when people were over there, yeah, they convoyed. But now in today's theater and the way that we're operating over there, we fly primarily. So
when you go back, how is it going to be different this time than last time? Is it going to be pretty much the same, or do you anticipate it being different?
You never know. Like, and that's just kind of one of those things that, like when I went to Iraq, like I had no idea what it was going to be like when I got there. I had no idea what we were doing.
Right.
And it was like, all right.
What's worse, Iraq or Afghanistan? For what
Iraq.
You do? Iraq's worse.
Oh man, Iraq was it's just flat. Like there's nothing there. Afghanistan's like the most beautiful country I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like it's absolutely gorgeous. Like the fact that you could, I mean, it's just amazing. Especially
it's crazy. That's the other thing that's so fascinating. When I say fascinating, obviously there's an asterisk with that, but like when you look at the landscape, it's crazy that it's been such a war-torn, combat-rich environment because like you look at it, it's just beautiful. There's mountains, it's green. Yeah. I mean, like you said, just looking at it, it looks like somewhere people want to go on vacation. Yeah, but you wouldn't.
I would go on vacation there, 100%. If I knew that I wasn't going to get shot.
Right. And Iraq, by comparison, is just
flat.
Sand. Just sand.
Just flat.
Hot all the time?
I was there during the winter. I got there in November, left in August. So, yeah, pretty hot when the summertime came around. But you mitigate your exposure to the sun, right? Yeah. Like that's not something like it's like, well, yeah, let's be tough and. Right. The hottest part of the day is when we should probably put all of our stuff on and go run down the flight line.
Who does that? What group does that?
I mean, like the weirdo that nobody talks to that sits alone and eats at the corner of like the dining facility. That's the dude that does that. Like 100%.
And he probably eventually gets recruited to go do something
and his name's like Dwayne. Like nobody talks to Dwayne because he doesn't shower and he's just weird.
Okay. So now you're out. You're getting out. You're going to go to Afghanistan because you're like, I'm getting out now.
What do you mean?
How much time do you have left in your contract now?
I have 2023 on this contract that I'm on right now.
Oh, so you're in now for a while then.
Yeah, I got 3 more years.
Gotcha. So
roundabout.
Afghanistan for how
long? 9 months as of now. So, I mean, coronavirus could cancel the deployment, but nobody knows.
Is there a chance of that?
I have no idea.
I mean, like, you would assume that when it's military, you can't stop being the military just because.
I just had this conversation with my cousin. I'm like, I have to leave my brain on the idea that like we're still going.
Right.
Nobody knows.
There's nobody saying anything.
Nobody's saying anything. So.
And if they were going to cancel, they probably wouldn't give you an update way too far in advance anyway, right?
No, they'd probably tell us like 12 hours beforehand. And I'd be like, guys, I just drove all the way from Central Oregon. They'd be like, yeah, okay, cool. See you in 4 weeks.
Wow.
So who knows? Yeah.
So then that's when you get back. I mean, what's your plan when you get back? Do you know? Do you like being deployed? I mean, would you rather do that if you had the choice?
I love being deployed. I don't have an issue with it. I'm at the point now where it's like I'm coming into being you know, like that young male adult. And I have like a baby niece and I have a baby nephew now. And it's like, I want to be around for them. And as much as I love being deployed, because it's like super easy.
Right.
You're just cashing checks, you working. Somebody cooks all your meals for you. Somebody does your laundry for you. Like, your life is cush. All you do is eat, take apart helicopters, lift weights, go to bed, watch church, do it again. Like, day in for 9 months. And then you come home and your bank account's huge and you're like, yeah, great, I love the Army. Yeah, fun. And then, you know, you come out of it. It's really interesting because it's almost like you go through these like hills and valleys like the entire time, right? Like, I have my civilian job right now is like I'm a pipe fitter apprentice at the Facebook data center down the road, right? So like killer job for Central Oregon, right? Killer benefits, killer pay, like no complaints about it. But still, you know, I did it for a year and I was like, man, I need to go back to Afghanistan.
Is there like the threat? Like, is there any part of that that would excite you, or is it just the being somewhere different? And
you're not really threatened while you're there. You know, like that's the whole, like everybody romanticizes it. And I'm not saying
I obviously do, because I'm like, tell me about how dangerous it is.
Like everybody thinks it's like the Hurt Locker or like Generation Kill, you know? And it's like, for me, that's not my job. Like, I'm not a gunslinger. You know what I mean? Like, this, I take apart helicopters.
Right.
When we fly over there, like, sure, like we have like these, they're called 240s, right? And then they're modified to be on a helicopter. So instead of having like a long stock, they have a butterfly grip. Like, we sit behind a 240 on the helicopter to protect it, but at the same time, like, we're not going to put that asset at risk.
Right.
Unnecessary risk just to get shot at. You know what I mean? Because then, one, we have to fix it. And two, that's not our job. Like, there's special operation aviation units out there that's what they do. Yeah. Right? So, like, for us, especially as mechanics, we're like, no.
Stay on base, fix what comes.
Yeah, fix it. Like, well, you do general support. You move people, you move product, you move supplies to people. Like, you do all sorts of stuff. You do everything that you would think a helicopter does, besides, like, the romanticized idea that we're just over there just the entire time, just
buzzing stuff down.
9 months of Wyatt Earp.
That's how I choose to view it.
No.
What? So when you're done, I mean, is this going to be a career, or are you gonna?
So August is 10 years, and
so it pretty much has been a career, regardless. At this point, I mean, 28. This has already been a career. Even if you were to stop today, 10 years, that's pretty much a career.
Yeah, it's a decade. Yeah, I mean, it's like, and I'll cross 10 years while I'm there. So I'll come back and it'll be at like 10 and a half. And then once the reset period from that deployment clocks through, I'll be at 11 years. And I don't know, man. Like, I've always, out of like protection for myself to like not sound like a nutbag, because like, one, I have no idea what I'm doing in life.
Right.
Like, I'm just here. Like, right. I'm here. I'm with God. I'm trying to figure it out. Like, this is where I'm at, you know? And so I've always just out of habit told people like, oh yeah, this is a career for me. But like, in the back of my mind, every time I say it, I'm like, but is it?
Right.
So I don't know.
There's kind of got to be a piece on that, because you know for the next few years where you're at. You know that till 2023, this is what you're going to be doing, right?
I mean, it's kind of one of those things that like I'm working through with God on the personal side to like figure out if this is even where he wants me to be anymore. Because there's a lot of, we can't really get into it because obviously it's a career and there's things that are secret of nature and I can't be, you know, communicating this with like the general public. But I'm definitely at that point now where it's like, I'm almost like thinking that God's saying like, this is it. Like, you're going to do this one.
Well, and I will say that God has a history of like preparing you in advance. So like, I know that there are times where people feel like God is starting to move them a direction and they think it's supposed to happen right now. And it seems like the enemy is always right there to rob you of your peace. And God's like, wait, no, not yet. I'm just preparing you. Like they say that like a bird, when it gets ready for its babies to fly, it starts pulling the feathers out of the nest until eventually it's like uncomfortable enough to like kind of. And I feel like that in my life, God has sort of like pulled the feathers out of things for a while. And I'm like, what do you?
That was exactly what I went through. Like last month in Pennsylvania. I was there for 45 days for a course that I needed to go attend to get a certification that was offered. They're like, hey, you want to go to the CH-47 transition course? And I was like, yeah. So I went, and that was exactly what I went through. That was like the first time I'd left in 6 months, because like 6 months prior to that, I was in Canada for 3 weeks up in Edmonton. Oh yeah, I guess I've been to Canada too. So all over, join the Army, travel, helicopters.
To Canada.
No, that was a sweet trip. Like we flew through Glacier National Park at like altitude, like under the glacier level. So like you're like right there. Like
I instantly don't like anything you just said.
It was so much fun.
That sounds terrible.
And then we were just in the middle of nowhere, Canada. And it was that part was super awesome. You got to work with the Canadians, which are just an awesome military to work with, and great trip.
Has Canada don't make fun of me for asking. Has Canada, do they participate in wars?
Yeah.
They do?
Almost everybody does. Iraq, we had like 12 NATO forces with us on the same base.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. I don't know why I
So
didn't
they
know
were
that.
like,
It's just not what you don't think of like military force. You think Canada. You think like
you definitely don't. And their
great
military,
people and ketchup
their
chips.
military is wild. Like,
Did you get ketchup chips while you're up there?
oh yeah, all dressed chips, man. Oh, dude, we had like a van and we would drive it to Walmart every day.
We're getting way off topic. We'll circle back to Canada some
Donuts
other
and
time.
all dressed chips. Woo!
So yeah, okay, back to where we're saying. It feels like God takes feathers out of the nest, and it's not like he's telling you to move right now. It's just like he's preparing you, because if he did it in a moment, you'd be like, no, I'm good here. I'm comfortable here.
Yeah, well, and that was the biggest thing too, where it was like the biggest struggle I had with that is like one, rationalizing it, because I didn't know what it was at first. All I knew is that like I got off the plane in Pennsylvania and I started going to this school, and like within 2 days, like I just had dread.
Yeah.
And it was like unexplained. Like, you know, I'm eating my vegetables, I'm taking my multivitamin, I'm showering, I'm going to the gym every day. Like, why am I full of dread?
Yeah.
You know, and once I finally came to the realization that like this is what he was trying to tell me, that like this isn't what you need anymore. Like, you have everything in your life without this. Like, you don't need to be.
Well, it's starting to develop an identity apart from your job.
And it was compounded. My nephew was born. Like, he's just a wee little baby right now. You know? He was born while I was there, and I'm like, why is this school important?
Well, the term uncle is going to mean something different for you with your experience than it would mean for the average person. Because there are going to be average people who are like, I've got nephews and nieces, but it doesn't feel life-changing. Your uncle literally kind of pulled you out in your senior year.
So
So
super
it's a
like important to
responsibility.
me. You know what I mean? Like, super important to me that I'm around for them in the future. And I don't know. Maybe cut the tie
Just
after
God
this.
sort of preparing you that may be that season.
I might be done. You know, which is like crazy, because I'm 10 years into I'll be 11 years into a 20-year retirement at that point. And it's like, am I really going to cut the ties and like walk away from it? Like,
So 9 more years you could fully retire with benefits and the whole deal.
be done.
Yeah.
You know, am I going to cut ties and walk? And one of those things is like, you got to trust God and accept it for what it is. And like, it's terrifying. Like, even the premise of thinking about it, you know, of like cutting ties with the organization and walking away is like just scary. But
yeah, I think that's where to me a relationship with God is so vital for anybody. It's not how do I get the desired outcome, because I think that is the average person that's going to walk in through the doors is going to have a how do I get my desired outcome. Is God how I get it, or is it something else? Average person.
Yeah.
And what I am learning even more the longer I'm at it is what I need is God. I need to know that God's going to take me through what I'm going through. Yeah. And whether it's this circumstance or that circumstance, it all doesn't matter. And so rather than saying, how do I get my desired circumstance? It's like, God, how do I make sure that I'm where you are? That if you and I are good, then I don't care. Take me through whatever, because that's where the peace and stuff comes from. So I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does. Totally does. And I think that that's probably the more important part for me, is like recognizing that like, like I'm so blessed to have the job that I do, right, within the military. And I'm so blessed to be where I'm at, where I can foster junior soldiers and I can, you know, instill mentorship and like make the organization a better place for people to be, you know, and like, cause that's what I'm all about. Like, taking care of people, one, doing hood rat stuff in helicopters. Like, those are my two things, right? Like, I'm not really interested in the parades and the awards and the ceremonies and all that. So, but at the same time, it's like, I would rather have purpose within God than have purpose within that organization. And that's kind of where the whole internal struggle that I had when I was in Pennsylvania, that I finally just came to the conclusion where it was like, I have everything without this organization. Right.
All of a sudden you feel like life is okay.
And like, it's scary to give up the retirement and the benefits and the pay, and because the pay's good. Like, everybody complains about the military, and it's like, we make really good money for what we do, right? Yeah. You're always taken care of. There's always a community there. Like, you know, there's a lot of blessings that organization gives you.
Well, and the training, it sounds weird, but training is such a blessing. Yeah. Somebody would teach you how to do something.
Well, I mean, it depends. Like, it depends on like what type of training and who you are as a person, right? Because like, always being a yes man, like that whole conversation you had about like embrace the suck. We have this certification place that we have to go to called NTC, and it's in the middle of nowhere, California, like the flats of the desert. And you show up at this place called Aruba, and it's just purgatory. And you're there for like 7 days, just getting super angry. And then they kick you out to the middle of the desert, and you fight a fake war. And you live in a tent, and you don't shower, and you don't eat hot food, and everything comes out of like a water buffalo, and you're miserable. Like, and like the training that you get from that, like, you learn a lot of mental toughness. Like the last time I went to NTC, and I always volunteer. Like everybody, like I'm telling you, like dudes have kids to get out of like not having to go to NTC. They're like, I'm gonna have another child. I can't go. Nope. Susie's pregnant.
Nope. Sorry.
You know, like,
I wish I could.
Nobody goes to NTC, and I volunteer every time because I like watching the souls of pilots die because they're prima donnas, man. Like all of our pilots are prima donnas. And you get them out there into the desert, you know, they haven't showered in 6 days and the fire's just going out, you know, and like, that's something that I enjoy. It's dark, it's twisted, whatever. Moving on. But like the training you get from like that mental toughness of like figuring it out, you know,
knowing
like,
that you're capable of more than you thought.
Yeah. Like a Black Hawk, the inside of the cabin of a Black Hawk is about the size of an 8-foot truck bed with a canopy on it, right? That's the inside of a helicopter. We can cram 14 people in there. Ooh. So one, that's uncomfortable, but what I'm getting at is like the last time we went to NTC, like the first 4 nights we were there, it's February, so it's like 23 degrees at night. We had 4 dudes sleeping in the back of one of those helicopters, and I was one of them because we're first up. I was in a medevac unit at the time, so we're first up med support, so the entire helicopter crew has to stay with the helicopter. We got 2 dudes in hammocks and then 2 dudes underneath us that are like curled up together, you know, and like it really sucked.
Yeah.
You know, and then you got like helicopters that are training, so they're flying over you the whole time. The helicopter's rocking. You're just angry. You haven't showered or had hot food in a couple days. You learn a lot of
For
grit.
the rest of your life, though. For the rest of your life, you're going to know that you can get through that.
Yeah. Well, then like a prime example is I went camping in the Ochagos like 4 nights ago, right? And I just threw a sleeping bag in the bed of the truck and I went to sleep. And I woke up at 1 and it was like snowing.
Right.
And I was like, oh, great.
All right.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I just kind of crawled in my sleeping bag a little bit deeper and let it go.
You almost feel bad for people that don't experience that. And this is probably true in anything, doesn't matter what it is. When you experience something that is so much worse than you thought you could get through and you're okay, you make it, maybe you don't like it. I'm not saying you prefer it.
Grit.
Literally, the grittiness that develops in a person, once you experience it, it's almost like, well, what's worse? What I had to go through to get it or not having it?
Not having it, 100%.
I agree.
I think grit is
But
like,
how do you explain that to somebody? Because without experiencing it, and you know what's crazy to me is not everybody does have it. Like not everybody has the ability to get through. Like you said, the recycle maybe, but
yeah. Well, I mean, you can't have a society of winners. Like there has to be winners. Like that's dark as well, but like it's factual. You know what I mean? Like if you had a society where everybody was a winner, like what it wouldn't be a society.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean? Like gotta have all types. So grit is important, and I think it's one of the most underwritten things that society probably doesn't practice.
I think that's a good takeaway. Honestly, I think that like grit is underrated.
Like, you know, you look at like these people that are on Instagram, like, you know, David Goggins or like Cameron Haynes, and like those guys have grit. Like, like that's like, and anybody can get grit. Like, it's not like leadership.
No, it's accessible. I heard a guy, I can't remember. I think it was the coach of the Raiders. What's the guy that's the coach of the Raiders? He said, you can't always lead the league in talent. You can't always lead the league in athleticism. You can't always lead the league in speed or height or weight or whatever. You have the choice to lead the league in effort. Like, that is a choice. The person who leads the league in effort, that's a choice. And in life, it doesn't matter what you do. You can lead in effort. You may not have all the talent, skill, ability, all the stuff, but you have the choice over how much effort you put into it.
Yeah, discipline. Like, that is entirely, and I tell every single junior that works for me, like, that's it. Like, that's the key to life is discipline, right? And one of the things is, like, I'm a huge proponent of physical fitness. Not the Army's version of it, because that's, like, a body weight thing where, like, you're all in a formation and the dude's, like, yelling at you and you're, like, doing all these exercises, and that sucks. Nobody enjoys that. But I am a huge proponent of physical fitness, and because of that, you know, like, I'm a gifted runner. I've always ran fast, and like nobody expects that. And so like every time we do like our 2 mile every 6 month run or whatnot, it's always onesies or twosies that are there that, you know, like I run my first 2 laps of the 2 mile and they're like, you need to slow down. Like you don't have that.
It's not sustainable.
Like you don't have that,
right.
You know? And it's like, I did the last one I ran was 2 weeks ago. And like I came in 2 miles at 11:17. Right? Like it's fast. And people will always tell you.
I could not run a mile
like,
in 11:17 for sure. For sure. I'm not telling you I don't think, like, not a chance. And I feel like I'm in fairly good shape.
I mean, and it's not that hard because I run though, you know, and then like people will be like, hey, you know, like must be nice to have that. And it's like, yeah, dude, it's just genetics.
Yep. I'm just lucky.
I just genetically get up every day and go for a run. You know, like I ran before I got here, you know. Like,
do you think that being tough is easier for some people, or is it, you think it's everybody, it's just a discipline?
It's discipline.
Yeah.
It's 100% because like it sucks no matter what.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like when I broke my foot and I came out of that, I was running like maybe an 18-minute 2 mile, right?
Yeah.
Like And
now we're
it
getting
sucks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it sucks the same amount of like the one I just ran.
Right.
You know, it sucked as much as it did today.
It's just your tolerance of being built.
You know what I
up
mean?
to-
Like,
yeah.
one of it is just like accepting being uncomfortable, and a lot of
Right.
people don't want to do that, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard. Like, but that is why discipline is so key. Discipline and grit. Discipline creates grit, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Grit creates good people. Like,
Yeah. Well, everything that we've ever done here, like even at the church, and I don't even view pastoring as big a part of my life as I would say an average pastor does. I love it, but it's not like I wake up and spend 40 hours a week in the office just craving ministry stuff. But it's just literally been the war of attrition of like, I didn't leave, I didn't quit, I didn't give up. Like there were times I didn't like, there were difficulties. There were times that Lacey and I couldn't get a clear. So even that same concept, it applies whether it's a running 2 miles or whether it's staying at your job now for like 9 going on 10 years, just the ability to stick with something until you're confident that you've gone through. Cause I just don't want to ever look back and go, I quit when it was hard. It doesn't matter what, I was doing. In fact, like I destroyed my own hips before I quit roping cows because I didn't understand that like I was bone on bone, but I didn't want to quit because it hurt.
Yeah.
I wanted to feel like I had accomplished something. Now we're getting off topic, but yeah, I think getting through the difficulty and then making a decision, I think is probably a good idea for anybody.
Yeah, which is hard because, you know, you always have that option. Like you can always just quit. And
Right.
You're going to have to look back on that and deal with it. So, I mean,
Yep.
I don't know. I think the church does a really good job. I cannot express how awesome it is that like you cycle through this so you're not getting, you know, that pastoral burnout that you talked to. Because like growing up, like in Sandy, we went to multiple churches, like 3 or 4 of them where we just left because the pastor was just so burned.
Right.
You know, and then you go from like a position of trying to foster like a community within a church, and it very rapidly goes from, you know, like, hey, this is a beautiful place to be, God is a beautiful thing to be with, and
Right.
fire and brimstone.
Right.
And then, you know,
Right.
what's that?
It's default. And like, that's
You
probably
know?
a podcast. Honestly, that's probably a podcast for a different day, but it's default. When people get tired and it feels like that they're out, they're just, their tank is empty. And that's the worst in my mind. I know people who've gone through physical burnout. I know people who've gone through mental burnout, and I know people who've gone through spiritual burnout. And I understand the argument that there's not a difference between mental and spiritual, but philosophy question for a different day. But there's a soul tired, like a bone tired. And what they're saying now, have you heard this? That like they have watched the burning calories. They've tracked their calories burnt by people that are playing in chess tournaments. Have you heard this?
No.
They tracked one guy that in a chess tournament in one day burned 6,000 calories sitting at a table. They couldn't figure out why the chess players were staying thin, and it was because mentally, when you're engaging, you're burning calories. And so there is a physical aspect to being burnt out.
That's wild.
Mentally burnt out. But what the result is like you start blaming everybody around you, everything around you. Like you're taking too much of your identity from your job. I don't care if it's military, I don't care if it's pastor, whatever it is. When you take too much of your identity, then it starts to feel like a survival technique. Like, have you ever had somebody hold you underwater for like a little bit too long, and you have this panic moment of like, I'm blowing up. I honestly think that's the reaction that a pastor is having that's burnout, because he physically feels like he's experiencing a death that he can't get out of, right?
Yeah.
And so there is a panicking of like, if you guys don't come to church, you're going to hell. I feel for those guys, because the perception is that they're just mean, or they're representing God inaccurately, and that may all be true. They're just fighting for survival. They're just trying to get back to a place where they feel normal.
Yeah, they're just at a place where they're swinging.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And so that's been interesting. Like my grandpa, he would pastor a church, and I think it's okay we can say this, but like he would pastor a church and he would get burnt out and he would leave. He'd pastor another church and he'd get burnt out and then he'd leave. And he'd pastor another church and get burnt out and then he'd leave. And like it was almost like he had his book of sermons, and when he preached all of his sermons, he'd leave and go somewhere else. The church would do good, and then it would leave and it would do bad. But at the same time, he was the guy that would, like, if the flowers got planted, he planted them. If the walls got painted, he painted them. Like he was the be all end all pastor, right? And so when people say that, and like I said, I don't think this is just a church thing, but when people say they want a leader who's like that, what they don't realize that they're asking is that they're asking for a leader that won't stay very long.
Yeah, 100%.
They're asking for someone that's not going to stay there for the long haul and be there when their kids graduate high school. They're asking for a pastor that will lay himself down on the altar, sacrifice himself, and be gone. And then they're going to have to find another one. Let's find another pastor. Just keep replacing them. These churches, and here's what's crazy about that. I'm on a rant. But here's what's crazy about that. They go through enough pastors that pretty soon they start to get this idea of like, well, these pastors just aren't going to stay, so we're not going to get super attached. So then it goes back to the health of the church. The health of the church suffers because somewhere in there they didn't have the ability to pull up and go, hey, as a pastor, I've got to have an identity that's separate from what I do on Sunday mornings. I've got to have an identity that is not based on behavioralism or moralism or all these like different weird things that are held to expectations of like, oh, you don't want to wear those shoes because those shoes are a little too nice, and they're a little too nice. People are going to wonder how much you're getting paid. And like, oh my gosh, the crazy of like, I don't know. I can't keep up with it.
There has to be a disconnect.
Absolutely. Like today, I literally washed blood off of my hands with rain before I walked in today. I went to a branding and like the Row Grove needle was dull. And I say that to say this, like that's what keeps in my own life sanity is having days like that. I'm not saying that is what makes me a pastor. That's not what I'm saying. But those are my people. Those are people I want to rub shoulders with. And so tying this all up, the military, I would say that that's probably true of anybody. Like you have to be engaged. You have to. It is part of your job. It is part of what you do. But learning how to say, well, what is my identity apart from that? Yeah. I wish as a pastor, pastors could learn that. I wish that people with a military background, whatever the case may be, I don't care if you work at the golf course. That is not what gives you value. What gives you have to know who you are so that you can bring that to your role in the military. You have to know who you are in Christ so you bring that to the job as a pastor or wherever you go. You've got to, people have got to settle on that as this is who I am. And so if I know who I am, then I'll know how to do my job, not vice versa.
Yeah, 100%. Pretty heavy.
It's a good stopping point, I think. It's crazy.
We kind of went long. I was like, this only could take like 45 minutes.
Yeah, sorry, I told you. Well, yeah, okay. All right, well, hey.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming in.
Pleasure.
Yeah, appreciate it. We'll do it again, I'm sure, when you get back.
How do you end a podcast?